A single mature leaf on a Monstera Deliciosa can stretch nearly a meter wide. In the wild, this plant hauls itself over 20 meters up a host tree, gripping bark with thick aerial roots while its top leaves break through the canopy chasing sunlight. Indoors, it is one of the most popular and most misunderstood houseplants you can own. So let us break it all down, starting with a detail most people miss entirely. There are actually two varieties commonly sold as houseplants. The Monstera Borsigiana is the smaller, faster-growing one. That is the variety you will find in most garden centres and furniture stores. Then there is the Monstera Deliciosa, sometimes called the large form, which grows slower, sprawls wider, and produces significantly bigger leaves with far more holes as it matures. Why does this matter? Because Borsigiana is much less willing to develop those iconic perforations in its leaves. You could give both plants identical conditions, and the Deliciosa will produce beautifully fenestrated foliage, while the Borsigiana stays relatively plain. So before you do anything else, figure out which one you actually have. It sets realistic expectations for what your plant can become. Now, those holes and splits in a Monstera leaf are called fenestrations, from the Latin word for window, and they are not just decorative. Here is what is actually happening in nature. As a Monstera climbs higher toward the canopy, the uppermost leaves develop more and more perforations so that light can pass through to the lower leaves underneath. The plant is deliberately shrinking its own leaf area at the top to spread light more evenly across the whole structure. Pretty clever, right? But here is the thing. Fenestrations only develop with age and light exposure. A young Monstera produces small, solid leaves no matter what you do. The holes will not show up until the plant is mature enough and getting sufficient light to trigger them. Keep a Monstera in a dim corner and it will push out plain leaves forever. The fenestrations simply will not come. And that brings us to light, which is hands down the single biggest factor in how your Monstera develops. More light means more energy through photosynthesis, which means faster leaf production. When light is too low, something very specific happens. The nodes, those joints on the stem where new leaves emerge, start spacing themselves far apart as the plant stretches toward whatever light it can find. This internodal stretching is a dead giveaway. If the gaps between leaves on your stem are wider than the span of your hand, your plant needs more light. In strong indirect light, those gaps tighten up considerably. And here is something a lot of people do not realize. Monsteras can handle several hours of direct sun as long as you acclimatize them gradually. Moving a plant straight from a dark spot into full sun overnight will scorch the leaves. Introduce direct light slowly over a few weeks, watch for discoloration, and pull back if you spot it. The best results come from giving the plant a clear, unobstructed view of the sky. If your home lacks south or west facing windows, grow lights are a solid alternative. A full spectrum grow light running 12 or more hours a day can replicate the conditions your Monstera needs for fenestrated leaves and steady new growth. Regular household LED bulbs will not cut it. They lack the right spectrum and intensity. You need a dedicated horticultural grow light positioned close enough to the plant. That is the difference between a Monstera that just survives and one that actually thrives. Let us talk about those thick, rope-like aerial roots that grow out from the stem nodes. In the wild, these roots press into tree bark, anchoring the plant as it climbs and pulling moisture from the air. Indoors, they serve the same structural purpose. A Monstera without its aerial roots anchored to a support or directed down into the soil is basically an unstable plant. The stems get heavy, tip sideways, and start creeping across the floor. If you push those aerial roots into the soil at a secondary node, it stabilizes the whole plant significantly. The roots grip and anchor, giving the stem a much firmer base. The trade-off is that a pot filling up with multiple root systems from multiple nodes gets crowded faster, which means you will need to repot sooner. Speaking of roots, Monsteras actually handle being root-bound better than most houseplants. A snug pot is not an emergency, and you do not need to rush to repot the moment you see roots poking out of the drainage holes. The real problem shows up when the root mass gets so dense that the plant cannot pull enough nutrients and nitrogen from the soil anymore. The first sign is yellowing leaves. The plant cannot maintain pigment when root congestion blocks nutrient uptake. When that happens, go up one pot size, not a huge jump, just enough to give the roots room to expand without creating a big ring of soggy, unused soil around them. Now, here is something that trips up a lot of plant owners. The number one killer of Monstera roots is not water, it is the lack of oxygen. Roots need oxygen to function properly. Dense, compacted soil cuts off airflow around the roots, suffocating them long before overwatering technically becomes the cause of death. Overwatering speeds the process up by filling air pockets with water, but the core issue is always oxygen starvation. A well-aerated potting mix, roughly 5 parts compost to 2 parts perlite, gives you water retention and the airflow roots need. The compost delivers nutrients and the perlite holds the structure open. Your pot absolutely must have drainage holes. Water sitting at the bottom of a sealed container creates exactly the oxygen-starved conditions that kill roots. And putting gravel at the bottom of a pot does not fix this either. Water actually has a hard time moving from fine textured soil into coarse gravel, so the soil above the gravel gets waterlogged long before any water reaches the stones. Drainage holes are the only reliable answer. For watering, Monsteras prefer to dry out between drinks. They do not do well in consistently wet soil, and growth slows down when the roots stay damp. A moisture meter pushed into the soil gives you an accurate reading. Water only when it reads dry. In summer, that usually works out to roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, which is less often than most other houseplants need. One thing to keep in mind is that Monsteras rarely droop their leaves when they are thirsty. The plant is a poor communicator when it comes to water stress, so meter readings are far more useful than visual cues. And do not water on a set schedule. Water based on what the soil actually tells you. A lot of people think you need to repot a new plant immediately into fresh soil. For Monsteras, that is unnecessary and often does more harm than good. Commercial growers use mixes calibrated specifically for the plant. Ripping apart an established root system before the plant has settled into your home just adds stress with no upside. Repot only when you see genuine signs of trouble, dramatically increased thirst, slowed growth, or visible root congestion. And when you do repot, plant it at the same depth it sat in the previous pot. Burying the stem deeper risks rotting the lower portion, which is not designed to sit in contact with soil. If you are unsure, go slightly shallower rather than deeper. Fertilizing provides the macro and micronutrients your Monstera needs for glossy, dark green leaves. But it is not the biggest driver of growth. Light and a climbing support give you more visible results. Feed during the growing season, spring through summer, and skip it in winter when the plant's metabolism slows. Follow the manufacturer's dosing instructions exactly. Too strong a concentration causes fertilizer burn on the roots, which can set growth back for months. Under-fertilizing shows up as general yellowing and fading across all leaves as the plant struggles to maintain chlorophyll without enough nitrogen. Let us cover disease quickly. Powdery mildew shows up as a fine white coating on leaves and stems. It tends to hit plants that are already stressed, whether from dehydration, poor feeding, or bad air circulation. And here is where we need to address the biggest myth in houseplant care: misting. Misting your leaves does not meaningfully raise humidity. What it does do is help mildew. Water droplets sitting on leaf surfaces create perfect conditions for fungal and bacterial growth. The airflow and rapid evaporation that prevent disease in a jungle do not exist in a still indoor room. Misting provides zero measurable humidity benefit and increases disease risk. Keep leaves dry and clean instead. Wipe the surface with a damp cloth every couple of weeks to remove dust, which blocks light absorption and reduces photosynthesis. A Monstera that is not climbing is a Monstera that is sprawling. Without something vertical to grow up, the stems push outward instead of upward, eventually leaving the pot and crawling along the floor. Any rigid vertical structure works. A moss pole, a plank of wood, bamboo stakes, or a simple trellis. Moss poles have the advantage of letting aerial roots penetrate the fibrous surface and eventually grip without needing any ties. Once those roots make contact with a textured support, the plant anchors itself, and as it climbs higher, the leaves it produces get progressively larger and more fenestrated. Position the support toward the back of the pot with the leaves facing your main light source. This keeps growth directed forward and the root system pressing against the pole from behind, which is where aerial roots naturally emerge. One more thing that catches people off guard. Monsteras do not respond to pruning the way most vining plants do. When you cut the stem of a philodendron or pothos, multiple new stems branch out from the cut point, giving you a bushier plant. Cut a Monstera stem and you get one replacement stem. That new stem starts its growth cycle over, producing small juvenile leaves with no holes, before gradually working back to mature, fenestrated growth. Pruning a Monstera back to where the leaves are solid reverses years of development. The plant returns to a juvenile state and has to mature all over again. The one exception is a top cutting taken from an established adult stem. A cutting with mature fenestrated leaves carries the developmental age of the stem it came from and will not revert to juvenile growth. You might also be tempted to plant multiple Monsteras together in one pot for a fuller look. In practice, this creates a root competition. Monstera roots are thick and aggressive, and a pot holding 3 or 4 plants becomes densely congested much faster than a single plant would. You end up constantly upsizing the pot and eventually have a plant that is difficult to manage and impossible to stake properly. One plant per pot with good light and a climbing support will develop into a bigger, more impressive specimen than any multi-plant arrangement. It will also be far easier to repot, divide, or propagate. Finally, if you spot yellow leaves, here is how to work through the diagnosis. Start by ruling out pests. Spider mites produce fine webbing on the undersides of leaves and where stems meet. Mealybugs show up as white cottony clumps on stems. Thrips leave small translucent windows in the leaf where they have fed through the tissue. Shake the foliage over a white surface and look for moving specks which indicate an active infestation. Once pests are cleared, inspect the roots. Root-bound plants produce a generalized yellowing across all leaves as nitrogen uptake gets restricted. Rotting roots from overwatering cause a similar yellowing, but the roots themselves will look brown and soft and may smell. Healthy roots are white or light tan and firm to the touch. Overexposure to direct sun causes fading and yellowing uniformly across all leaves, not just 1 or 2. Selective yellowing on lower leaves typically points to root congestion or nutrient deficiency rather than light or water. And if you have gone too heavy on fertilizer, the fix is replacing the soil entirely and waiting at least 2 months before feeding again. If this helped clear things up, hit subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next.